Hey guys, Chickadee Maine, aka DeBud.com, with a video surf forecast update. This surf forecast update brought to you by North Beach Fish Camp. Looking for some of the freshest seafood in town? Visit North Beach Fish Camp, located at the end of Atlantic Boulevard in Neptune Beach, Florida. Taking a look at last night's run of the GFS model forecast, and as we advertised several days ago over on our Facebook page, we are now entering a very active period to start the 2013 Tropical Atlantic Cyclone season. We also advertised that we could possibly see our first two tropical systems during the first 10 days of the 2013 season. Looking at last night's run of the GFS, we're starting to see some model verification of that forecast. But first, let's start you off over here in the Eastern Pacific with what has now become Tropical Storm Barbara. Tropical Storm Barbara forecast to become Hurricane Barbara during the next 24 hours. Forecast track is for Barbara to lift towards the north, towards the Bay of Campeche, but then weaken to a tropical depression. Now, we could see the remnants of Barbara or part of Barbara reform over here in the Bay of Campeche, and this possibly could lift out of the Bay of Campeche and head towards the Panhandle or North Florida in the extended period. But first, let's take a look at what's happening off the northern coast of Cuba and back in here towards Hispaniola. As we discussed a couple of weeks ago, sometimes a surface trough can develop in here in the Bahamas that will increase the southeast wind flow or enhance the southeast fetch, and this will lead to larger surf conditions for the east coast of Florida. This looks to happen as we progress through the model forecast. You'll see what we're talking about going into Thursday. You'll see that the GFS lowers some pressures over the Florida Straits in here off the north coast of Cuba and back in here towards Hispaniola. As we get in here to Friday, you'll see that the GFS now deepens an area of low pressure in the northern Bahamas. This should get some small craft advisory flags flying in here off the east coast of Florida as wind speeds will pick up southeast 15 to 20 knots. As we get into Saturday, the GFS leaves us hanging in here in between the southeast Florida coast and the Bahamas. So it looks like larger surf conditions this weekend for much of the east coast of Florida, possibly into Georgia and South Carolina. As we get into Sunday, you'll see that it relaxes just a bit, but then there's a shift in the pressures going back towards the central Bahamas and back towards Hispaniola. Now look what's happening over here in the Bay of Campeche. We've got some deepening lower pressures now over here in the Bay of Campeche. When we get into Monday, we still see this lower pressure over here in the Bay of Campeche, and then the shift back towards the South Bahamas and Hispaniola. When we get into Tuesday, look what happens here, folks. We've got some more deepening over here in the Bay of Campeche, and we now have an area of low pressure to the east-northeast of the central Bahamas in here. Going into Wednesday, a little bit more deepening. We now have two areas of low pressure, one up in here in the Bay of Campeche and one again nearly stationary east-northeast of the central Bahamas. So this is what we're going to be looking at and monitoring over the weekend for some possible development into next week, and we could see our first two tropical systems of the 2013 Tropical Atlantic Cyclone season. One other thing that we'll point out to you, although it's too early in the season to really be looking at this way, but for at least for development purposes. But on Sunday, this is forecast to move off the African coast on Sunday, and this image is for Wednesday of next week. This looks like a vigorous tropical wave that's going to be heading west this way, and we may be looking at this next weekend as well, somewhere right around in here. And then there's another one that is forecast next Wednesday to move off the African coast. So we've got two strong tropical waves look like they're going to be exiting off the African coast from Sunday through Wednesday of next week. So again, folks, we're getting into a very active period, so you'll make sure you stay tuned for the next forecast update.